Hi guys, so I know that the Tories in Scotland like to blame Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP for pretty much everything. But an anti-SNP journalist for The Times Scotland sought to blame the Scottish Government, which is a coalition of the SNP and Greens, for, wait for it, trained staff in England taking industrial action. You really can't make this up. Here's Kieran Andrews blaming Scotland for raising wages, and therefore opening the floodgates.
Is going to be tough, and we've seen that up in Scotland. The Scottish Government has just settled on a 5% pay deal for train drivers after a long dispute here, or rather it's been recommended for acceptance by train drivers. But what that's done, because the rail network in Scotland has been nationalised, that has set the floor for public sector pay negotiations. And up here it's going to be a tough time for the Scottish Government finding the money for nurses, teachers, police officers. And then I think you'll see public sector workers across the rest of the UK looking north and saying, well, if they can find the money, why can't the UK government and the Treasury find it for us?
Well, first of all, he's suggesting that the Scottish Government won't be able to find the money. And then he's suggesting that, well, if they can find the money, it will set some sort of precedent for others. Well, which is it? Is it they have the money or they don't have the money? But the main point here, of course, is that he's suggesting that, well, because the railway is nationalised in Scotland, and the Scottish Government have given the train staff, the workers there, a pay increase of 5%, that's going to put pressure on the UK government, because obviously people around the rest of the UK will say, well, if people in Scotland can get a 5% pay increase, why can't we? And he's painting this as if it's a bad thing, not a good thing. Wouldn't it be good for people to get a pay increase of 5%? Because a lot of people, unfortunately, who are also working are struggling at the moment, and they need more money. The measures that have been presented by Boris Johnson's government are not cutting it. They're not digging these people out of this cost of living crisis. So one way would be a pay increase of 5%, for example. Now, 5% is not going to alleviate all of the people's pain, because if inflation is running at between 9 and 10%, you're still going to be 5% worse off. But it's better to be 5% worse off than 10% or 9% worse off. So a pay increase of 5% would help. But this guy thinks it's a bad thing. And he thinks that Scotland doesn't have the money, or maybe Scotland does have the money. I think if the Scottish Government negotiated this with the rail staff, they probably believe that other sectors would be asking for pay increases too. So I presume that would be factored in. But why is this such a bad thing? People are struggling at the moment. They can't pay their bills. They are struggling to feed their families. If the government are not going to provide sufficient assistance, then a pay increase is the only other way to go. But it's interesting that this guy is somehow blaming the Scottish Government for creating this scenario where workers in the rest of the UK will demand more, and maybe even get it. That would be a terrible thing. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.